Hello, this video is primarily for my friend Tim. Tim and I have discussions on quite a bit, and recently Tim and I just sent a text to him of a story that I'd heard about for the first time, and I was kind of amazed that I'd never heard about the burning of Smyrna. I think it happened in 1923 in Turkey, and I'd never heard about this incredible tragedy, and it was really an incredible crime where probably over 100,000 people were killed as the Turks came into Smyrna and really killed a lot of Armenians and various Christians and Greeks that were in the town there, and just burned the city. It burned for like 9 days. And I'm amazed. I'm a history major. I like history. I'd never heard about this. And so it just reminded me about how many things that I don't know. And so I sent that over to Tim. Tim and I have discussions about a lot of interesting things. And he sent back a response, and Tim's real good at, and so Tim, if you're watching this, I really appreciate the fact that you are willing to admit that there's a lot that you don't know. That you're agnostic about a lot of things, not just about the question of God, but about a lot of things. But one of the things that Tim said in his response is one of the reasons that he dropped faith when he was younger, because the implication is, and he and I have had discussions about this on several occasions, that faith is kind of believing something without evidence or without good evidence. And so you're better to be agnostic because you can't know certain things. It leads to, at least from what I can see in his life and in some other people's lives that have this sort of a hard agnosticism when it comes to God, it leads to a practical atheism. In other words, you live as if not just God, but anything outside of the supernatural doesn't exist. Or excuse me, anything outside of the natural, anything that might be outside of this realm of existence doesn't exist. It is what I would term a philosophical naturalism or an empiricism, that the only evidence that counts, at least in regards to God or anything supernatural, would be evidence that's within the world that you can test in empirical testing. Now, and so therefore, because faith in God or anything supernatural would involve believing in something that is interacting with the natural world that can't be tested like that you can't really know it. It would be impossible to know. And I disagree with that definition, obviously, because I'm a Christian, I'm a pastor, and it's part of the discussion that we have on this issue. And I really want to get with Tim and try to, and that's the reason I'm making this video, primarily for him to watch. But I want to talk about how do we know things. I've been doing a lot of listening recently about the idea of epistemology, how we know, and the difference between justified true belief, knowledge is kind of, that's the philosophical definition, versus just belief. And I'm not sure I can fully understand the distinction there, but I would say that on this issue that I don't like the definition that I hear from Tim, and it's kind of what I hear from kind of sometimes the online atheist community, that faith is believing without any evidence or without any real evidence. And I think that is wrong, first of all, that I don't think anybody actually does it. Even those people who just claim to have faith, you got to just have faith. And there are people of various religious backgrounds and sometimes non-religious backgrounds that use the term in that way, but I don't actually think that they are using it to say believe without any evidence, because even there I think you could talk to them and they would have some level of evidence to go in a direction that they're going. Whatever that is, they have some level of evidence. So the question isn't whether or not somebody believes with or without evidence. The question really is the evidence legitimate? Is it strong enough? And how can we test that evidence? And so for me, that definition is faith is believing without any evidence, or essentially without evidence, needs to be tested itself, because I don't think that definition holds true really for anyone. And so therefore, I think then what we need to do is find out what is a belief based upon. And I think we all believe things. And one of the problems with this whole standard of knowledge is I think the standard for, quote, supernatural, outside the natural realm, is so high a bar that nothing could meet it. Because as humans, we are in fact limited creatures. We, just like I didn't know about Smyrna, this very massive crime committed in history against 100,000 people. There's just tons of things that I don't know. So everything that I believe, everything that I think I know with a gradation of evidence, good and bad. And there's absolutely nothing. And I think, the ultimate skeptic, David Hume, basically kind of made this point that kind of we can't fully know anything certainly. And I think that's true, but that doesn't mean that we can't claim to know or that we shouldn't act upon things that we believe to be true about the world. And in fact, we all do that. I'm driving my car right now, hopefully not looking at the camera too much, but I'm acting as if this car can get me to Sioux City. That's where I'm headed today. And so I have a tested belief in the mechanics of the car and the road system and the fact that other people are going to behave in a certain way. And hopefully this will work out for me. And it's a justified belief in that. But all things that we believe are on a gradation like that. And so the question really is, do we have good evidence or not? And then we need to test the evidence. We need to examine the evidence in our lives to determine, am I doing a thing that's justified? Can I really trust this thing or this person or this belief that I have? And I think one of the things that I'd like to have this discussion a little further with Tim is the whole idea of how he believes things. That, in fact, I'm not sure a lot of the things that he acts upon can actually hold up to this same standard of evidence that he might claim for religious belief or the supernatural. And so, frequently we've had discussions about morality, for instance, and the things that are wrong in this world. And I think it comes right down to the fact that on a standard, if we can't know anything that is not empirical, that can't be tested, then we can't actually know that morality is a real thing. Even if we feel it, we can't know that in any kind of real way, because morality is not something in the physical world that's empirical. And so even the idea of suffering, which I think is a standard that he has used in the past, or that basing it on suffering, we can't say that suffering is good or bad per se. We have to start somewhere, and that's one of the issues. I know I've listened to some Coleman Hughes. Conversations with Coleman is the podcast I listen to, and Coleman is a young guy, a philosopher, thinker, and he has talked to various people, talked to various some of the new atheists, for instance. I think he's had Richard Dawkins on recently, and talked about standards of morality. Sam Harris he's had on. He talked about Sam's standard of morality, and what he basically said was that you've got to have a starting point. And if you start with, let's say, I know Tim and I have talked about humanism. If you just start with a kind of a basic humanism as an axiom and then work from there, then you can make it all work. But my problem is that why start there? How is that axiom grounded? It's just a fiat. We're going to make a decision that this is where we should start, but it can't be proved, because in fact the standards behind humanism are themselves not empirical. Even the statement that evidence needs to be empirical is grounded upon some logical assumptions about the world that can't be proven in a 100% way. And so, as a matter of fact, I'm not sure they can be proven at all in any kind of empirical, testable way. And so, because some of the very ideas behind the philosophy of science and how to do those things are ideas that are themselves not empirical. We just have to make assumptions about the world and work on those assumptions. And that, to me, actually is evidence that if we're going to trust those things, if those things are trustworthy, just like if morality is trustworthy, we might ask the question, why do we think so? Where did that come from? Where does this notion, why is the world logical? And so there's actually lots of different things beyond just personal experience, which I think I've had with God, and I think God does interact with the world. I think that there are some miraculous interventions that are best explained by supernatural events. But even if we didn't have those, we just looked at the quote natural world, I think it can't explain itself. And so the best explanation, again, it's not 100% proof, but there's lots of lines of evidence that lead me in a direction. And so when I believe something, I have faith in something, it's not based on nothing. It's based on lots of lines of evidence. And then I act upon it because, from my perspective, anything that is 50% or more, I'm going to believe, I'm going to act, at least as long as I have that evidence, act as if that is true and go forward in that manner. And that can be in relationships. I oftentimes have to trust people. I have to have faith in somebody because they have proven trustworthy in the past. I have faith in this car that I'm driving in, even though my daughter's car broke down last week. As a matter of fact, I've done several auto mechanic things over the last month because they needed to happen. And so on the whole, it's going to be trustworthy, but sometimes it breaks down. So we end up having to act upon things regardless. Now, for me, it's way more than 50% as far as my belief in God, who I think Jesus really is, but certainly I think it's enough to be actionable, because as one of my favorite thinkers, Greg Koukl, says, why do I believe in God? Why do I believe in Jesus? Because I believe that that's the best explanation for the way things really are. And so as long as I am there, I am going to act on that, and my faith then is justified in the sense that I believe I have lots of lines of evidence, and because those lines of evidence all kind of line up in the same direction, then I'm going to move in that way. I'm going to orient my life in that way, and frankly, even how my life works then helps to verify for me. It helps to verify the truth of those claims, because if they are true, if God really did make the world, if I am his creature, if I act in accordance with what I believe he has said about the world and myself, it should work better. And I find that that is another line of evidence that in fact does line up, that my life, when I act in accordance with, I believe, how God wants me to act, loving him and loving others, the better I in fact follow those things, it's another line of evidence. So it's just, are these lines of evidence real or not? And I guess the other part of that is I would like for Tim and other people from this perspective to be skeptical of their skepticism, because I don't think that a lot of the things that Tim really does, he and I agree on a ton of different things, but that they can be justified in an agnostic way, as if he's not acting as if these things in fact aren't true. But when we get down to the brass tacks or the nitty gritty of morality, for instance, it frequently comes down to the fact that under this same standard of evidence, he cannot prove, there would be no justification to criticize anybody on any sort of behavior, because you have to be agnostic about the idea of morality, period. And so anyway, these are just some of my thoughts. I wanted to put them out there. And Tim, if you see this, I'm not trying to make a huge criticism of you. I'm just trying to enter in discussion, and I happen to be on a drive to Sioux City, and I thought I would just put this out there. Maybe some other people can interact with it as well. Have a good day.